What's up guys, Sean here, and today we're going to talk about Kamala Harris dropping out of the presidential race. We're going to go over why I think she dropped out of the race, and what exactly went wrong with her presidential campaign. So at the beginning of this year, I did my first breakdown of some of the candidates running for president in the Democratic primary. I entitled it Strong Women of the Democratic Primary, and I went over a number of candidates, including Kamala Harris. Now, to give you some context for when I shot and uploaded that video, at the time that I put that video out, Kamala Harris was considered to be one of the top tier candidates running for president on the Democratic side, and there was a lot of buzz around her in the media about this black woman being the one to take out Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is going to prosecute the case against Donald Trump. And in my video, I said plainly and clearly that Kamala Harris had virtually no chance of securing the Democratic nomination, and I named off a number of reasons why I thought she had no chance. The first thing that I said was going to hurt Kamala Harris immensely as she got through the primary season was her lack of authenticity. Kamala Harris has about the same levels of authenticity and charisma as Hillary Clinton.
To the lovely people of Wakanda, I know you will make the right choice. And as always, Wakanda forever.
But unlike Clinton, Kamala Harris's last name isn't Clinton. You see, Hillary was an embarrassingly bad candidate who had flip-flopped on every position. She came off as inauthentic and just as a liar every time she spoke. But she had all the connections within the Democratic Party, and those connections were key to her preventing other people from running against her in the Democratic primary. Kamala Harris has nowhere near the same connections to the Democratic Party power brokers that Hillary had on a national level, so I knew that that lack of charisma with that lack of connections was definitely going to end her campaign earlier than she hoped.
When it's time to battle, I have no problem doing my fair share and grabbing a spear.
I mean, seriously, really absorb these clips that I'm playing for you throughout this video. There is no way to watch any of these clips of Kamala Harris, let alone all of these clips of Kamala Harris, and not come away cringing at the notion that this person can be this inauthentic and this uncharismatic. In fact, even the supposed highlight of her presidential campaign was tainted by this rehearsed, inauthentic nature that Kamala Harris cannot help but put forward. She told this story that was supposed to humanize her and provide an emotional reason for people to turn away from Joe Biden and support her about how she was among the second class in her public school district to go to that public schools due to the policies of forced federal busing.
I do not believe you are a racist, and I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. In America, I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Now, this was considered the best moment of the Kamala Harris campaign. After this exchange, she polled the highest that she ever polled throughout the entire primary, but Kamala Harris ruined it because she can't help but ruining it by handing out t-shirts that were pre-printed with the slogan, "I was that girl." Now look, every candidate, except for maybe Donald Trump, actually comes prepared for these debates. They have plans of attack that they want to use against other candidates to help boost themselves. They also come prepared with defenses against attacks that they might receive. But if you're gonna do that, you have to have a little bit of the illusion that that's not exactly what you're doing. But when you already have t-shirts printed up and ready to go for the key line of your debate performance, you seem like a robot. You seem like you've planned this out way too much. You remove all of the mystique around you telling that story on the debate stage by revealing that you rehearsed that story down to the very word just so you could have a big campaign moment. The next thing that I knew would hurt Kamala Harris was her criminal justice record. During the course of the primary season so far, Kamala Harris would consistently, on the debate stage, come out with the most authoritarian positions and proposals in order to solve whatever she perceived to be problems in the country. Now, there have been tons of candidates in tons of primaries that made wild claims about what powers the president has and what they would do with the powers that they perceive that the president has once they take office. So it's definitely nothing new for us to hear presidential candidates on primary debate stages make insane claims about what powers they would exercise when they become the president of the United States. But unfortunately for Kamala Harris, her claims were very reflective of her record as Attorney General. Because as Attorney General, she believed that everything, and I mean absolutely everything, was within her power to solve using the criminal justice system. A great example was when Kamala Harris was in San Francisco and she decided that she was going to use the power of her office to lock up the parents of kids who were truant.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. Said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail.
Obviously, when I first saw that clip, I knew two things right away. One, there's definitely more shady stuff in Kamala Harris's past when it relates to criminal justice. And two, she was going to be in a lot of trouble. And all of this came to a head when Tulsi Gabbard, more than any other individual, decided that she was going to end Kamala Harris's career.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way. The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Yeah, withholding exculpatory evidence when somebody that you know is innocent is on death row is horrific. Holding people in jail past their sentence so that you can use them as cheap labor for the state, also not gonna fly. And just for good measure, being a hard ass on marijuana while you're the Attorney General and then admitting when you're running for president to make yourself seem cooler that you smoke marijuana and laughing about it like it's no big deal, like you didn't lock up thousands of people for the exact same thing that you did, like you didn't choose to harshly enforce those laws against those thousands of people for something that you now claim you did and laugh about. Not gonna fly. This attack by Gabbard was so devastating to Kamala Harris that it actually reduced her black support down to 1%. That was the base that Kamala Harris was supposed to be the one to appeal to throughout the Democratic primary. That was Kamala Harris's lane, her one path to the nomination. And Tulsi Gabbard, in one fell swoop, obliterated that base of support. But Tulsi didn't just obliterate Kamala Harris's support, she also seemed to melt Kamala Harris's soul. Because in the next debate, the best thing that Kamala Harris could possibly come up with was that she was the first candidate to call on Twitter to ban Donald Trump, the president of the United States, for saying mean things on Twitter.
I frankly think that based on this and all we've seen him do before, including attacking members of Congress, that he frankly his Twitter account should be suspended. I think there is plenty of now evidence to suggest that he is irresponsible with his words in a way that could result in harm to other people. And so the privilege of using those words in that way should probably be taken from him.
That's embarrassing, especially for someone who argues that they are the one to prosecute the case against Donald Trump, to run and tattle on Donald Trump to Jack Dorsey and get him to try and solve some of your problems for you. Horrifically embarrassing. Now, as bad as all that stuff was, and as cringe as all that stuff was, there was always a possibility that even still, Kamala Harris may have been able to overcome all of that and secure the Democratic nomination. except for the fact that she always had one problem that I haven't named yet, and that problem is Joe Biden. Now, I've been saying this from the beginning, that despite all of Joe Biden's stumbles, despite the fact that half the time when he speaks, when he starts a sentence, he has no idea what is going to end that sentence, that Joe Biden is a legitimate candidate for the Democratic primary. Yes, his dentures almost fell out in a Democratic debate. Yes, a capillary exploded in his eye in another Democratic debate. Yes, he tells weird stories about him fighting people named after cereal at a public pool with a chain. But Joe Biden has the black vote. The primaries go in this order: Iowa, New Hampshire, then South Carolina, and a bunch of other southern states where the majority of the Democratic voters voting in primaries are black. Biden is the overwhelming favorite among these key voters in the Democratic primary, and as I said before and numerous times on this video, Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders because she had the support of black people in the early primary states. Yes, the DNC was sabotaging Bernie Sanders. Yes, the media was clearly in the tank for Hillary Clinton. But the determinant factor for the 2016 Democratic primaries was the fact that Hillary Clinton killed Bernie Sanders among black Democratic primary voters. Also, there's another huge advantage that I said in my original video that Joe Biden has, and that's influence within the Democratic primary. And specifically, the way that that influence plays out is that if some of the other candidates, maybe some of the candidates that the Democratic Party isn't too fond of, like Bernie Sanders, are a little too close to Biden, Biden would have the influence, the ability to get the big wigs of the Democratic Party to get these other moderate candidates that don't really have a chance to pull out early in order to consolidate his support and beat the progressive wing, who are currently splitting their votes among Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. I mean, think about it. Despite the disastrous nature of Kamala Harris's campaign, she's only down at 5th place. There are candidates beneath her that are still in the race. I know everybody's hyped up on Pete Buttigieg right now, but he's really just the candidate of the week. There is no reason to believe that if you're Kamala Harris and you're hovering around 5th place, that the bump that Buttigieg is currently getting can't be obtained by somebody like yourself. But even with the hectic nature of these primaries, even with random candidates surging to the top briefly, Kamala Harris drops out incredibly early due to what I have to believe is political pressure coming from the DNC so that the moderates can consolidate behind one candidate and beat out the progressives. This is the power of Biden. Sure, Buttigieg in recent polls is doing really well in Iowa and New Hampshire, but he's polling at 0% among black people in South Carolina, meaning that as soon as he gets to South Carolina, his campaign is dead. If I'm Kamala Harris, I have to believe somewhere inside me that there is a chance that I could get to the top or near the top in Iowa and New Hampshire, and when it gets to South Carolina, I can definitely do better than 0% among black voters in that state. But instead of taking her diminished but still existent chances, she decided to drop out. This reeks of party manipulation. This reeks of the party's desire to consolidate around an establishment candidate like Joe Biden. Now, if you'll notice, at no point when I talked about the failure of the Kamala Harris campaign did I attribute as a negative the fact that Kamala Harris is a woman of color. And the reason I didn't do that is because that would be an absolutely ridiculous thing to do. However, Kamala Harris and the media have decided to go with racism as an excuse for her failing campaign.
The way that the media have treated Senator Harris in this campaign has been something else, grossly unfair and unfortunate.
You women are held to a different standard, and black women especially.
This becomes an older and wider field for the top tier candidates.
We're at this moment where we went from the most diverse set of candidates in the history of certainly my lifetime to an all-white state.
Now look, this tends to happen a lot in politics. Loser candidates are full of excuses for why it wasn't them. It was actually every other possible factor but them that explains their loss. This has literally been Hillary Clinton's MO since she lost to Donald Trump in the 2016 election. She wrote an entire book about how it wasn't her fault, and it was every other factor on planet Earth's fault for why she lost that election. But what makes this excuse for why Kamala Harris's campaign was a complete and utter failure particularly bad is that Kamala Harris's entire appeal as a candidate is that she's a black woman. If Kamala Harris was a white woman, she'd be Kirsten Gillibrand, and she would have been out of the race months ago. This is someone with no charisma, no conviction, someone who will flip-flop on any position, will pander to any audience, that was only taken seriously because she had more intersectional points than other candidates like Kirsten Gillibrand, who are essentially the exact same person as Kamala Harris. Anyone who tells you that her being a black woman wasn't the number one thing that she had going for her is completely wrong. And anyone who tells you that that's something that hurt her in this primary is a total and complete liar or an idiot. But those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. The support mechanisms, you guys know them by now. Teespring, PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar, and I'm forgetting one, Venmo. I think it's Venmo. This has been me talking about Kamala Harris's failure, complete destruction, being a total loser of a campaign. Till next time.